Here's something that wasn't supposed to happen. In the late 1960s, engineers in British studios decided to break the rules. The 1176 compressor was designed with 4 ratio buttons: 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, and 20-to-1. And you were supposed to press one at a time. But these engineers pushed all 4 buttons in at the same time, creating a sound so aggressive, so explosively punchy, that it would go on to define the drum sound of rock music for the next 50 years. What happens when you engage the all buttons mode isn't just more compression. The entire circuit starts behaving in ways Bill Putnam never intended. And that's exactly why it sounds so good. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what happens inside the 1176 when you engage this legendary setting, why it creates the unmistakable crush sound, and most importantly, when and how to use it in your own mixes. Hello, and welcome to Kenetic Sound, where we embrace the idea that we don't start as professionals, but we can all become pros through practice and knowledge. I'm going to take you on a deep dive into the circuit behavior of the all 4 buttons mode today. Far deeper than you'll find in most tutorials, because understanding the why behind this technique is what separates engineers who use presets from engineers who create their own signature sounds. Before we dive into the circuit behavior, let's understand where all buttons mode came from, because this context matters. In 1967, Bill Putnam Sr., founder of Universal Audio, introduced the 1176 peak limiter. It was revolutionary, the first true peak limiter with all solid-state circuitry using the newly invented field effect transistor technology. Where his previous compressor, the 2 bass 175 and 176, were warm but slow, the 1176 could achieve attack times as fast as 20 microseconds. That's 0.00002 seconds. Fast enough to catch the absolute leading edge of a drum transient. The original Rev A units produced in 1967 became known as Blue Stripe for their distinctive blue meter panel. Only about 125 of these original units were ever made, making them among the rarest piece of studio gear in existence. By 1970, revisions C, D, and E introduced the low noise circuitry designed by Brad Plunkett, giving birth to the iconic black-faced LN models that most engineers picture when they think of an 1176. Now, there's where the accident actually happened. The 4 ratio buttons on the 1176 were designed to be mutually exclusive. Press one and the others pop out. But the British engineers, always willing to experiment, discovered you could force all 4 buttons in at once. Universal Audio's own documentation confirms this wasn't intended. It was an unexpected use case that the original circuit designers never anticipated. The sound was unlike anything else. Explosive, aggressive, drums suddenly had a pumping, breathing quality that cut through any mix. Engineers started calling it British mode, or the 4-button trick, and it became one of the most sought after sounds in rock production. Now, let's get into the engineering. This is where it gets really interesting. To understand all buttons mode, you first need to understand that the 1176 is a program-dependent compressor. This means that the attack, the release, and even the effective ratios all vary depending on the incoming signal. Under normal operations, the 1176 will faithfully compress at your selected ratio for transients, but here's the key. The ratio actually increases slightly after the transient passes. How much it increases depends on the program material. This behavior is part of the 1176's character at any ratio setting. But in all buttons mode, several additional things happen simultaneously. And this is crucial to understand. First, the effective ratio jumps to somewhere between 12:1 and 20:1, but it's not fixed. It fluctuates constantly based on the signal. Second, and this is the key insight, the bias points change throughout the entire circuit. This isn't just about ratio. The bias points are the operating points of the transistors, and when they shift, everything changes. Third, because the bias points shift, the attack and release times also change. They are no longer responding predictably to your knob settings. They're being influenced by this altered circuit state. The result is a compression curve that's completely unique. Where a normal 4-to-1 setting creates a gentle slope of gain reduction, all buttons mode creates what engineers describe as a severe plateau. Here's something particularly intriguing. In all buttons mode, there's a lag time on the attack of the initial transients. Some engineers describe this as a reverse look ahead. The compressor actually lets more of the initial transient through before clamping down hard. This is why all buttons mode sounds so punchy on drums. You get that initial snap of the stick hitting the head, and then the compression kicks in aggressively on everything that follows. The transient punches through, then the sustain gets crushed. There's one more circuit factor: distortion. In all buttons mode, harmonic distortion increases significantly, particularly in low frequencies. Specifically, testing shows a rise in even order harmonics, the second and the fourth, which add warmth and thickness. This is because the ultra-fast attack and release times, combined with the altered bias points, cause the compression to happen so rapidly that it creates harmonic artifacts. This is why kick drums sound absolutely massive in all buttons mode. That low-end distortion adds weight and grit that you simply cannot get from any other compressor setting. The UA 1176 Classic Limiter Collection gives us 3 distinct models, and each one responds slightly different in all buttons mode. Let me break this down. The Rev A, nicknamed Blue Stripe, represents the original Putnam FET design from 1967. This model has the most aggressive character, higher distortion, grittier saturation, and a unique FET gained amplifier sound. Input clipping is most evident on this model even when the gain reduction isn't occurring. In all buttons mode, the Rev A is the most raw and aggressive of the 3. The lack of low noise circuitry means you get more harmonic content, more grit, perfect when you want that vintage, in-your-face drum sound. The Rev E, nicknamed Blackface, represents the early 1970s low noise era. Based on the Brad Plunkett circuit lineage, it features a more linear compression response compared to the Rev A, with transistor gain amplification and a different program-dependent release behavior. In all buttons mode, the Rev E is cleaner but still punchy. It's what I'd call the workhorse setting. It's versatile enough for aggressive compression without quite as much raw distortion as the Rev A. The 1176 AE is the rare hot rodded anniversary edition. It's an emulation of UA's 40th anniversary hardware, which combined features from multiple revisions with some unique modifications. It includes 2 exclusive features not found on the other models: a lower 2-to-1 compression ratio borrowed from the original 176.2 compressor, and a fixed super slow 10 millisecond attack mode for shaping transients differently. In all buttons mode, the AE offers a unique texture, still aggressive, but with slightly different character options thanks to those additional ratios and the attack choices. If you're getting some value from this video, please let me know by clicking the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you wish to see more videos like this. Don't forget to click on the notification button so you'll be alerted each time I post a new video. I've got many more plugins to cover in the future, so you'll definitely want to see those. I'd also love to know what's your favorite use for the all buttons mode. Drop a comment below and let me know if you typically apply it to your drums, bass, or if you found some other creative applications I haven't covered. Before we dive into the audio demonstrations, I want to give you something. I've put together a complete deep dive document on the 1176 collection along with a set of flashcards for quick reference and a quiz to test your understanding, all completely free. It's my way of saying thanks for spending the time watching this video. Head over to the link in the description below to grab these valuable freebies. They'll help you internalize everything we're covering today and actually remember it when you're in the middle of a mix. So now that you have all the details of what the controls do, let's bring the plugin up on screen and dive into an immersive demonstration. I'll play music through the 1176 and show you exactly how all buttons mode affects the audio signal in real time. Watch as I adjust the parameters. I'll focus on the specific values, explain what those numbers mean technically, and show you why they matter for mastering this tool. This hands-on approach will give you the technical understanding you need to truly control the plugin. Let's dive in and take a closer look. Let's start with the drums, the classic all buttons application. First, I'll play the drum bus without any compression so you can hear our starting point. Now, let's engage the Rev A in all buttons mode. I'm setting the input to drive some gain reduction and watch the meter. In all buttons mode, it's going to behave strangely, almost erratically. This is normal and faithful to the original hardware behavior. Hear that? The transients punch through, but everything after that gets crushed. That's the reverse look-ahead phenomenon I mentioned. The lag time on the attack letting the initial hit through. Now let's compare to the Rev E in the same mode. Slightly cleaner, more controlled, but still aggressive. The low noise circuitry gives us a bit less grit while maintaining that punchy character. Here's a pro tip that takes all buttons mode even further. Set both the attack and release knobs to their fastest settings, fully clockwise. What happens is that the compression is cycling so fast that those minute level fluctuations become audible distortion. This is called the grit trick, and it's particularly effective on bass guitars and aggressive vocals. That gritty, saturated character is pure 1176 magic. Let me give you clear guidance on when all buttons mode makes the most sense. For the drums and drum buses, it's almost always worth trying. Room mics and overhead mics particularly benefit. All buttons mode can make a distant room mic sound like it's right up against the kit. For bass guitar, especially if you want that aggressive cutting tone, all buttons mode adds grit and helps the bass cut through dense mixes. For vocals, use it sparingly, but when you want that in-your-face, intimate sound, nothing else quite achieves it. Think lead vocals in aggressive rock or hip hop. If all buttons mode feels too extreme, remember you have the mix control on the collection models. Blend the crush signal with the dry signal for parallel compression without any complex routing. The beauty of this approach is you get the punch and excitement of all buttons mode while retaining the natural dynamics of your source. It's important to know that all buttons mode is a sledgehammer, not a scalpel. There are 3 specific situations where you should absolutely avoid it. First, on delicate acoustic sources like folk guitar or intimate jazz vocals, the aggressive transient shaping will crush the nuance and life out of the performance. Stick to a gentle optical compressor like the LA2A instead. Second, when you need transparency, if you're looking for invisible glue on a massive bus, this is the wrong tool. All buttons mode announces itself. It adds color and grit. If you don't want to hear the compressor working, don't use this mode. Third, if your mix is already saturated, if you're running through tape emulation, tube preamps, and distortion plugins, adding all buttons mode might push you into harsh, unpleasant territory. Always trust your ears. If it sounds cluttered, back it off. So let's bring this all together. All buttons mode isn't just more compression. It's a complete transformation of how the 1176 circuit behaves. Altered bias points, fluctuating ratios, modified attack and release times, and increased harmonic distortion. The reverse look-ahead lag on the initial transients is what gives you that punchy, explosive sound. The low-frequency distortion is what makes kick drums sound massive. And the program-dependent nature of the compression is what makes it feel musical rather than mechanical. Understanding this isn't just academic, it's practical. When you know why the all buttons mode sounds the way it does, you can make informed decisions about when to use it and how to dial it in for your specific source material. My next video will be covering British Class A versus SSL versus API. Which console sound fits your mix? A comprehensive comparison to help you choose the right console emulation for your productions. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.